We've got a letter that was submitted to us, sort of in reference to a past topic that we covered. And I said this at the top of the show. Um, we mentioned some concerns with using AI in the workplace. Can you elaborate on some of them? And let's set this up with story time, okay? Story time. There was once upon a time an attorney who decided that they didn't have enough time to prepare their legal briefings. So, what did they do? They do what many more of us are doing. Consulted with their expert counsel, expert buddy, ChatGPT, and said, ChatGPT, can you whip up a response to this legal briefing? And can you include case law that supports our position? And of course, ChatGPT said, yes, I've got you, my friend. I'm here for you, whether you're on my free account or my $20 a month. I'm going to take care of you. Well, this guy was plastered all over the news because ChatGPT actually dropped the ball and he didn't catch it. So, how did he drop the ball? How did ChatGPT drop the ball? Well, it's because the cases that ChatGPT cited didn't actually exist. So, and I can't remember if this was like civil or, something like high crimes and misdemeanors or whatever. But this attorney is now sort of the laughing stock of his industry because it basically submitted a book report without checking sources. And so that is one fundamental issue of using ChatGPT. I said on Twitter recently, trust but verify. And if you can't trust it, don't use it.
Man, I cannot believe that story, but at the same time I can because one of the major issues with it is disinformation. So you've presented a very real situation, but something to think about is what happens if people are relying on it for medical advice, right? Everybody goes to Dr. Google, right, when they have symptoms. So imagine the concern with using AI for this, or I know it sounds crazy, emotional support, kind of in
Hmm.
that same category of medical advice. Somebody's typing in, a situation and wondering, like, what should I do? Right? This is not a perfect model. So I think just the disinformation is one of the largest concerns that I think everybody needs to be aware of. In the HR space, I'm always thinking about bias, right? These are, tools that are essentially being trained to make decisions. And talking about stories, I know we're kind of short on time. One of the situations that I had read about and kind of, researching more of this topic and wanting to become more familiar with what's happened in the past so we can try to avoid those in the future is that, there's AI tools that have made unfair decisions for certain groups of people. And a couple years back, Amazon was actually creating a hiring algorithm, and their tool that they were experimenting with actually rated applicants from 1 to 5 stars. And it was found that it was biased. It didn't evaluate technical and development jobs in a gender neutral manner, and it was biased towards women. And this is a prime, pun intended, example of where these tools are not perfect. They have a bias, and we need to be aware of it so that we can train them better and not allow them to execute decisions that could be problematic. In short, Amazon retired the tool in 2017. There just wasn't enough leadership support that they could get it to where it needed to be.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, gosh, you hit the nail on the head with the tools using to qualify people, but I'm also seeing that recruiters are pushing back on resumes that have been crafted using artificial intelligence. And so on both sides of this issue, there's pushback. And I guess, this whole conversation is about what are some of the perils of it, right? So a artificial intelligence or computer assisted tool can embellish your resume, can embellish your how you present yourself in a way that kind of takes the authenticity away from it. So if I'm a recruiter and I'm going through 100 resumes, and by the way, we do recruiting here at Jumpstart, just in case you didn't know, quick plug. But if I'm going through 100 resumes and let's just say 70% of them are computer generated, well, if I'm doing the due diligence to do phone screens and match people's experience, what they say on paper and what they're talking back to me and saying, that's gonna make my job 10 times harder because now instead of job seekers fighting against the bots for sourcing and screening, recruiters have to fight the bots for, is this an authentic representation of a person's skills and abilities and past performance? So, it's a wide open topic here. I think, in the interest of time, we can go through other things like, so we've mentioned misinformation. We've mentioned embellishing. Um, we've mentioned uh, training. How do you train your people to use these tools responsibly? Because of the absence of training, people will just do whatever. You mentioned some of the liability of like what happens if people are relying on these tools and then sharing it out with the world, and people are depending on this information for health matters, right? What if you're a manager who is confronted with a employee that you have to console, and you're like, I don't know what to do. Let me go to ChatGPT, and then they tell you something that's totally wrong. You're on the hook for that. There's never a world where you'll be able to say an AI tool told me to do that, and the courts will be like, well, okay, it was the tool's fault. No, ultimately, it's still it's still on you.